How great are you, Yah? How great is your mercy? How great are the things you have done for me? How great are you, Yah? Your loving kindness is filling my heart as I sing. How great are you, Yah? How great is your love? It reaches to.
There's neither Jew nor Greek. There's neither bond nor free. There's neither male nor female. For you are all one in the Messiah, Yeshua. And if you be the Messiahs, then are you Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. Today, we are going to chronicle the story of the Israelites and their epic journey as they depart Egypt. We're going to detail the events that led to the first Passover on Abib 14 and their subsequent departure on Abib 15. Welcome to the Exodus, leaving Egypt. Before we start, we will ask a word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, our Creator, we come before you and honor you on this, your Sabbath day. We are grateful for these days of unleavened bread and this Passover season that we're in the midst of. Thank you for this day. Would you bless the work, bless this day, bless this meeting, and we are grateful to you. We call to you that you would guide our lives, provide your Spirit for us, through us, and in us. Show us the way and the truth, and may your will be done, and may we be pleasing in your sight. We look forward to the return of Yeshua, look forward to the millennium that he will usher in and we can be a part of. Thank you so much for calling us out of this world's way. So we seek your glory, your righteousness. We seek first your kingdom, and we pray to you now and honor you in Yeshua's name. Hallelujah. Amen. Well, greetings to all from Northwest Montana on a very spring-like day here. We're grateful to be here. We're in the middle of the days of unleavened bread. It's the weekly Sabbath, and we're going to be talking about the Passover, particularly the Passover as it relates to the Exodus from Egypt, that very first Passover. We're at the beginning, and actually this is a new presentation this year, one that hasn't been previously recorded. We're at the beginning of the Passover season, and as we've talked about in the past, the Passover has a theme and is about redemption. The first day of unleavened bread is about deliverance and liberty. We have seen in the previous presentation about Yahuwah fulfilling his promise to Abraham some 430 years before this event that we're going to chronicle today about the Exodus from Egypt. And then the last day of unleavened bread, coming up in a couple of days, about hope and salvation. We've pretty much looked at the events in the Exodus period of time and used them as the theme base for all of these presentations. And it turns out they're applicable not only in the Old Testament, but also in the New. But today we're going to talk about the Passover, and we're going to talk about the redemption of the Israelites. The Exodus from Egypt will have several parts to the presentation. The first part, we're going to look at the meaning of the word redemption in a little bit of detail, but we're also going to look at and examine the summary of the Passover and days of unleavened bread instructions. Since this is the beginning of a series, I always like to go into the Torah instructions of why we're doing what we're doing. And so we'll do that today. We'll look at the Passover and the days of unleavened bread instructions. And then we'll jump to some of the preliminary events that took place some 3,500 years ago, when Egypt met with Pharaoh and was seeking the release of the Israelites and their bondage in Egypt. We'll look at some of the preliminary events, and then we'll look at the detailed timeline of specifically the 14th of Abib and the 15th of Abib. So that's what we're going to be going over today. Let's start with a couple of charts about purpose and meaning. And of course, the word Passover itself comes from a Hebrew word that means exemption, pasha, exemption. It also means the leaving out or passing over something. That would be pretermission. And we see the word used in a number of places in the Old and the New Testament, the word pasha. But we're going to take a look at the word redemption here. And let me read Exodus chapter 6, which will give us the beginning of our foundation today. And Elohim spoke unto Moses and said unto him, I am Yahuwah, and I appeared unto Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by the name of El Shaddai. But by my name Yahuwah was I not known to them. And I have also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their pilgrimage, wherein they were strangers. And I've also heard the groaning of the children of Israel, whom the Egyptians keep in bondage. And I have remembered my covenant. Wherefore say to the children of Israel, I am Yahuwah, and I will bring you out from under the burden of the Egyptians, and I will rid you out of their bondage, and I will redeem you with a stretched out arm and with great judgments. And I will take you to me for a people, and I will be to you an Elohim, and you shall know that I am Yahuwah, your Elohim, which brings you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. And I will bring you unto the land concerning the which I did swear to give it to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And I will give it to you for a heritage. I am Yahuwah. So this first word that we want to look at is going to be redeem or redemption. And it turns out that the word redeem, as used in the context here in Exodus chapter 6, is the Hebrew word ga'al. And ga'al, when you look in a concordance, you find that there are some 104 matches, and the majority of them appear in Leviticus, Ruth, and Isaiah. The word ga'al means deliver, purchase, or ransom. Pardon me. And what we find is the word ga'al in a couple of other applications is an interesting word to look at, because here in Exodus chapter 6, Yahuwah says he's going to take the Israelites out of bondage and redeem them. Ga'al, he's going to deliver them, purchase them, and pay for their ransom. The word ga'al is found in the book of Ruth in a number of places. It's one of the highlights of Ruth, this kinsman redeemer who is known as Boaz. And the kinsman redeemer has a significant part of the theme of the book of Ruth. Let me read in Ruth chapter 2. And Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, Blessed be he of Yahuwah, who has not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said unto her, The man is near of kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen. And the word kinsman here really is the word ga'al. So you see that in Exodus, it's the word ga'al is translated redeem, but here in Ruth, it's translated kinsman. And the reason it's translated kinsman is because Boaz is the kinsman redeemer. So the word kinsman has been added to the text to give a definition of who it is, but this word ga'al is really a redeemer has been provided for the book of Ruth. I'm not going to go much into detail in the book of Ruth. I'm thinking to do a series on Ruth because it is so rich in analogy and allegory, particularly of Yeshua. And of course, the book of Ruth is all about the story of Naomi, Ruth, and Boaz, who come together, Boaz being the redeemer, the kinsman redeemer for Naomi's family, because Naomi's husband, who was Elimelech, died, and there was no one to carry on the family name. In addition, in the book of Ruth, Naomi and Elimelech had previously sold and leased out some of his inheritance. And that inheritance was to be redeemed by the Jubilee year, the 50th year, or it would fall back to the family just as it was supposed to, as we see in Leviticus 25 with the Jubilee legislation. So the Redeemer here in Ruth really has several components to it. The kinsman Redeemer, which Boaz fulfilled the role of, the land redemption, which he was buying back, but in addition to that, there was a Levirate marriage that took place because there were no male offspring in Naomi or Ruth's family left. And Ruth was a Moabitess, so she was a Gentile. The end of the story is that Boaz marries Ruth. They have an offspring whose name is Obed. And that continued the line of the genealogy through David all the way to Yeshua. Quite a stunning story, but the word Gaal, or kinsman redeemer, is a common one in this story. Another application for redeemer or Gaal is the Avenger of Blood. And you see that in several places, but in Numbers 35, it says, the Revenger of Blood himself shall slay the murderer. When he meets him, he shall slay him. So the Avenger of Blood is the redeemer for the good name of the family of somebody that has been killed. The Revenger of Blood could kill someone who had committed manslaughter against a joint family member. The only thing is that the person that committed that, what would have been manslaughter, not first-degree murder, but manslaughter and accidental death, had access to 6 cities of refuge out of the 48 Levitical cities. And those 6 cities of refuge or asylum could be used to protect the person that was guilty of this manslaughter, and they couldn't be touched once they went to the city. Again, another fascinating use of the word Gaal, and in this application, the word redeemer means the Avenger of Blood. So a little bit of background on the word redeem here. It's really far-reaching in application, and of course, Yeshua is our Redeemer, and he will be the Redeemer through Yahuwah's grand plan to take the Israelites out of the land of Egypt in the account that we're working on. The next application that I want to come with, it's in the Hebrew, is another Hebrew word that's translated redeem, and that's padah. And padah is found in 59 circumstances or matches, largely in the book of Exodus, Deuteronomy, Numbers, and the Psalms. And let me read an application of it here on the subject we're on today, which is the Exodus. And it came to pass when Pharaoh would hardly let us go that Yahuwah slew all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beast. Therefore, I sacrifice to Yahuwah all that open the matrix, being males, but all the firstborn of my children I redeem, I padah, and it shall be for a token unto your hand and for frontlets between your eyes, for by strength of hand Yahuwah brought us forth out of Egypt. So you wouldn't know unless you looked at a concordance that the word redeem in English has at least 2. It turns out there are several additional words that are translated from the Hebrew word, but the second example I'm showing you here, padah, is another one of the common ones that you see in 59 places in the Tanakh. It means to sever, similar to Gaal, ransom, or to release. And a couple of applications in other scriptures to see what it is. In Deuteronomy 15, it says, and if your brother, a Hebrew man or Hebrew woman, be sold to you and serve you 6 years, then in the 7th year you shall let him go free from you. And you shall remember that you were a bondsman in the land of Egypt, and Yahuwah your Elohim redeemed you, padah you. Therefore, I command you this thing this day. Psalm 49, but Elohim will redeem, padah, my soul from the power of the grave. He shall receive me, selah, or pause. And there's another word that has 14 matches, Gehulah, And it really has to do with the reconciliation and redemption of property. Gehula means the right of an object or the right of property. And you see that mostly related to Leviticus 25. A number of those matches are there. Again, some of them are in Ruth because the kinsman redeemer is going to Gehula, or have the right to the property and to buy the property back that Elimelech originally leased out. So we see this word Gehula associated largely with property redemption. There are a couple others with lesser usage. I hope you get the idea of redeemed, and it goes beyond just the English word redeemed in the Hebrew text. Now, in the New Testament, we also see the same word, redeem or redemption. And of course, it comes from a Greek root, and that first Greek root I want to talk about is apolutrosis, in whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins according to the riches of his favor. Apolutrosis means the ransom paid in full. And again, I've mentioned this before, but normally when a ransom is paid, it's for somebody that's innocent, like somebody that's been kidnapped, and a price is paid to get them free. Well, in this case, the ransom that's being paid is for us that are guilty. Guilty, we should have the death penalty assigned to us, but the ransom is paid by Yeshua, paid in full so that we can have life, wherein he has abounded toward us in all wisdom and prudence, having made known unto us the mystery of his will, according to his good pleasure, which he has purposed in himself. Isn't that stunning? Yahuwah has purposed it in himself. It's his plan, it's his idea. It's purposed it in himself that in the dispensation of the fullness of times, he might gather together in one all things in the Messiah, both which are in heaven and which are on earth, even in him, in whom also we have obtained an inheritance, being predestined according to the purpose of him who works all things after the counsel of his own will. Again, another interesting association with his will, the counsel of his own will. He's the one that provides his own counsel. No one else is able to. That we should be to the praise of his glory, who first trusted in the Messiah, in whom you also trusted. After that, you heard the word of truth, the gospel of your salvation, in whom also, after that, you believed. You were sealed with that Holy Spirit of promise, which is the earnest or the down payment of our inheritance until the apolutrosis, the ransom being paid in full of the purchased possession, unto the praise of his glory. Yes, hallelujah. So this word redemption really has a deep meaning in the Greek, apolutrosis. Another example of it's in Romans chapter 3, being justified by his grace or his favor through the apolutrosis that is in Messiah Yeshua, through the ransom being paid by the Messiah Yeshua. And we see one other example of this in Luke. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. The time when your ransom is paid draws near. Won't that be an amazing day if we get to live to see that? You know, we're going to look up and realize and lift up our heads. Our mouth will be probably wide open as we see Yeshua coming in the clouds, and the thought will be, our redemption draws near. What a moment that will be if we're alive to see it. And another word in the Greek text that is translated redemption in the English is lutrosis. Obviously, apolutrosis and lutrosis are related. Lutrosis meaning a ransom, and so it's very similar to the first one that I showed you. Neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer sprinkling the unclean sanctifies to the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of the Messiah, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to Elohim. Purge your conscience from the dead works to serve the living Elohim. And for this cause, he is the mediator of the New Testament, that by means of death, for the apolatrosis of the transgressions that were under the first testament, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance. So this word lutrosis is only found in 3 places in the New Testament, Luke and Hebrews. And we see one of those applications here, and it's interesting, the same English word redemption is translated as the ransoming in the first example, and apolatrosis, or the ransom paid in full, in the second example. So I think you get the flavor of this. This is about ransoming. It's about having a debt paid for in full by someone else, and that someone else, of course, is Yeshua. It's noteworthy that Yeshua, by his own blood, entered once into the holy place, having obtained eternal aeonias, perpetual and everlasting redemption. So this word for eternal here is aeonios, and means perpetual and everlasting. And it's in 2 places here that Yeshua has obtained the eternal redemption, and that the promise of eternal inheritance is mentioned at the end. So the word aeon is the key to this, and aeon are meaning an age, and aeonios meaning perpetual or everlasting. Now, one example in Luke of this same application of lutrosis: blessed be Yahuwah Elohim of Israel, for he has visited and redeemed his people. Lutrosis, he's lutrosist his people, if you will. He's ransomed for his people. And then one final example in the Greek New Testament, and the word redeem in this case is exagorazo. The Messiah has redeemed, exagorazo, us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is one that hangs on a tree. And a second example of this is to redeem, or exagorazo them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. So this word exagorazo appears in just 4 places, Galatians, Ephesians, and Colossians. But again, it's underneath the understanding of the English word, the one English word that we mean for redeemed. So of course I want to get this foundation, because the Israelites were being redeemed when they left Egypt, and we are being redeemed when we leave the Babylonian Egyptian system, if you will. We're being redeemed out of that today. We're honoring Yahuwah and wanting to be pleasing in his sight, so that he in fact will redeem us out of this system that we find ourselves living in. We are only sojourners here. We're about to be redeemed out of it. Now, I want to go into the Passover and days of unleavened bread instructions here. And the first mention of unleavened bread comes pretty early in the scriptures in Exodus chapter 12. So let's take a look at that. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Even the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eats leavened bread from the first day unto the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there shall be a holy convocation, and in the 7th day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat. That only may be done of you. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread. For in this selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall you observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. Forever is olam, the vanishing point. You think about that. Forever means the vanishing point, the time out of mind. You look out in the distance, how far can you see? Well, you can really see forever, but we're sort of limited by the atmosphere and the human eye. But forever is olam. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at even, and this means at dusk or eventide, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at even. 7 days shall there be no leavened bread found in your houses. For whosoever eats that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether to be a stranger or born in the land. You shall eat nothing leavened. In all your habitation shall you eat unleavened bread. And we have gone through in one of the earlier parts of the presentation series, particularly the one that was titled In the Evening or Ba'arev. We have gone through these scriptures in detail to make sure we understand the difference of at even when it's Ba'arev versus at even or in the evening when it's Bein Ha'arba'im. And there's a huge difference of when that time period is. So if you're listening to this presentation and you don't know the difference between Ba'arev or at even versus Bein Ha'arba'im, which means between the evenings, if you don't know that difference and distinction, I'd recommend that you go to the Answers of Life website and find the presentation on Ba'arev and Bein Ha'arba'im to give you the understanding. I'm not going to go into the details of it here other than to mention that there's a difference. And what's noteworthy when we go through here, though, and it's worth mentioning, is that the first month on the 14th at even you shall eat unleavened bread until, this Hebrew word ad means as far as or as long as the 21st day of the month. I'll mention this Hebrew word ad again coming up soon in the next slide or two, but the until means up to, up against. It's like, I'm going to work until tomorrow. It means I'm going to work up till the beginning of tomorrow. It doesn't mean I'm going to work through tomorrow. And it's an easy to understand distinction, but that's what it means. So this scripture shows us that unleavened bread is, the days of unleavened bread is for 7 days, that it's a holy convocation day in day 1 and in day 7. And it's a perpetual ordinance, and it goes until the 21st at the end of the day. The next scripture that's commonly read during this period of time of the holy day season in the Passover season is Leviticus 23. And Yahuwah spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them concerning the feasts, the Moads," these are the appointments, the festivals, the assemblies of Yahuwah, "which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations. Even these are my Moad, my feast, my appointments. 6 days shall work be done." It's noteworthy that Yahuwah starts out by saying, these are all my appointments, and the first one he mentions is the Sabbath day. And you notice that they're the feasts of Yahuwah. These are my feasts. These aren't the feasts of the Jews. And what a corruption it had become as these days became twisted. The holy days became twisted and corrupted with extra tradition and ritual until the first century when Yeshua came. So it's no wonder John called these days the feast or the holy days of the Jews in several places in the Gospel of John. So 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest. It's a holy convocation. You shall do no work therein. It's the Sabbath of Yahuwah in all your dwellings. These are the feast. These are the Moad of Yahuwah, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their seasons. That's what I'm doing today. I'm proclaiming these holy days in their seasons. The 14th day of the first month at even, and here's that distinction of Bein Ha'arba'im, is Yahuwah's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast or the Hag of unleavened bread unto Yahuwah. So you see there's a difference here. The 14th day and the 15th day mentioned separately. So the 14th day we clearly understand is the Passover day, and the Passover is on the front end of that, as we will see as the children of Israel leave Egypt. And the 15th day of the same month is a Hag of unleavened bread. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. In the first day you shall have a holy convocation, and no servile work is done. But you shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahuwah 7 days. In the seventh day is a holy convocation. And it goes on to say, and Yahuwah spoke to Moses, going on, when you be come into the land which I give you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then you shall bring a sheaf of first fruits of your harvest to the priest. He shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah to be accepted for you. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. And in fact, tomorrow will be that wave sheaf day that's being talked about here. This wave sheaf day is significant because the wave sheaf day is the day that the priest offered this first fruit, which is the barley harvest. They offered that as the offering that's during the days of unleavened bread. When did Yeshua rise? When he was crucified? Well, he rose on the wave sheaf day. He is the first fruit. He's the first of the first fruits. So when we talk about the application of this in the New Testament, it's really stunning to realize that first fruit Omar of barley that's offered in the old Levitical system was a forward pointer to Yeshua. In fact, all of this implication of these holy days is a forward pointer to Yeshua. So we see in Leviticus 23 that the 14th day is the Passover, and the 15th day starts the days of unleavened bread for 7 days. It's noteworthy that Leviticus 23 was written through the inspiration of Yahuwah to Moses as part of the covenant that was given there. And actually, we have labeled these covenants so we can keep track of them, because there was a first version of the covenant that was given when the Israelites first showed up at Mount Sinai, when the 10 Commandments were given. But that covenant was broken, and a second version of the covenant was established while they were there. And this is part of that second version of the covenant. And so when I label it as version 2, it's not something you find in the scriptures, but a way of cataloging that which happened at Mount Sinai. And in Numbers, we see the offerings for the days of unleavened bread mentioned. And in the 14th day of the first month is the Passover of Yahuwah, and in the 15th day of this month is the feast. 7 days shall unleavened bread be eaten. In the first day shall be a holy convocation. You shall do no manner of servile work therein. But you shall offer a sacrifice made by fire for a burnt offering unto Yahuwah. 2 young bullocks, 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year. They shall be unto you without blemish. And their meat offering shall be of flour mingled with oil. 3/10 deals shall you offer for a bullock, 2/10 deals for a ram. A several tenth deal shall you offer for every lamb throughout the 7 lambs, and 1 goat for a sin offering to make an atonement for you. You shall offer these beside the burnt offerings in the morning, which is a continual burnt offering. After this manner you shall offer daily throughout the 7 days the meat of the sacrifice made by fire, of a sweet savor to Yahuwah. It shall be offered beside the continual burnt offerings and his drink offerings, and the 7th day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work. So these offerings were substantial and significant, and there were many of them, not only the holy day offerings, but the new day offerings that were offered are talked about here. So there's a lot of sacrifice going on. And interestingly enough, the offerings for the days of unleavened bread of 2 young bullocks, 1 ram, and 7 lambs of the first year, and a goat for a sin offering turns out to be the same as for the new moon offering. We see that in the same chapter. This chapter has a lot of the offerings in it. And it says in Numbers 28, in the beginning of your months, you shall offer a burnt offering to Yahuwah. Each month it starts. The new moon, 2 young bullocks, 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year without spot. It goes on to say, and 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering to Yahuwah shall be offered beside the continual burnt offering and his drink offering. Pretty amazing that the new moon offerings and the feast day offerings, the festival day offerings, are one and the same. Now, in a few years back, I remember having Bible study with a group of people, and I always have made a point to read through the offering schedule when we see it in the Torah. And somebody said, why do you read all of that Old Testament stuff? It's not applicable to us anymore. Well, let me tell you the reason that I like to read it is because it's a reminder of what Yeshua has done for us. Let's think about all these offerings that these people needed to do with the Levitical system. And one time for all, Yeshua took care of it for us. We know this all points to Yeshua. Every word of this points to Yeshua and the significance of his one-time sacrifice. So this account here in Numbers 28, by the way, that we're reading, I would say likely occurs 39 years after the original Exodus. In other words, all the offering schedule that's being talked about here likely was just before they went into the promised land. They were at Moab a couple of chapters previous. We know that from Numbers 26 because it says they were in the plains of Moab by Jordan near Jericho. So I expect that Numbers 28 is in that same time frame, but I don't think it's provable, but circumstantially it would seem so. But all of this that applies in a forward-looking manner applies to Yeshua. It says it's in a number of places for sure in Hebrews, but just one example as a reminder, the significance of what Yeshua has done for us. Neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. That's pretty stunning to me, going once into the holy place, and he has replaced all of this by his blood, his sacrifice, and his death. Now, another section in the Torah that's used to talk about the days of unleavened bread, and usually it's used to talk about the Passover itself on the 14th, is Deuteronomy 16. And again, we've gone into detail in Deuteronomy 16 in the Ba'arev and Bein Ha'arba'im presentation, so I'm not going to repeat everything. I'm just going to skip over the highlights of Deuteronomy 16. But Deuteronomy 16 is not about the Passover on the 14th. Those that have attended those presentation series will clearly know when we read this as a reminder, this is talking about the holy days of the days of unleavened bread. Observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover to Yahuwah your Elohim. For in the month of Abib, Yahuwah your Elohim brought you forth out of Egypt by night. You shall therefore sacrifice the Passover to Yahuwah your Elohim of the flock, which means sheep and goats, and of the herd, which means beef or oxen, in the place which Yahuwah shall choose to place his name there. You shall eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread therewith. Talking about the 7-day period, not the 1 day up front, the 7-day period. Even the bread of affliction, for you came forth out of the land of Egypt in haste, that you may remember the day when you came forth out of the land of Egypt all the days of your life, when you came out on the 15th. And there shall be no leavened bread, no seor, is what this translates from, seen with you in all your coast 7 days, neither shall there be anything of the flesh which you sacrifice the first day at even remain all night until the morning. And a couple of points about this. This is about the tabernacle sacrifices. This is not about the domestic home Passover sacrifice. This is about the tabernacle or the temple sacrifices that would evolve out of this once there was a temple. This is about 7 days. 7 days of unleavened bread from the 15th to the 21st. And largely this is talking about the peace offerings that the people would offer so that they would have communal meals. It's noteworthy. A big clue here is, if you haven't heard this explanation before, that it's noteworthy that the offerings that are talked about here, the sacrifices, are beef and oxen. And beef and oxen weren't the Passover meal. This is not it wasn't the Passover of oxen or of bovine. It was the Passover of lamb or goat. And it also says that there's not to be any yeast, no barm for 7 days. And it says no leavened bread is seen within all your coast. And of course it means, other contexts we see the word leavened bread, meaning the bread that is leavened. It is talking about that. But the true context of this is seor. Seor is the starter. There shall not be any yeast starter seen with you for 7 days. So not only do you get rid of the leavened bread, but you get rid of the starter. They all made bread from starter yeast in these days, and they didn't buy it in a grocery store. They made it. And this word seor is also known as barm, and barm is the foam or the scum formed on the top of a fermenting liquid, such as beer, wine, or feedstock for spirits or industrial ethanol distillation. It's used to leaven bread or set up the fermentation in a new batch of liquor. So those that know about bread making will know that if they use a starter, and Linda uses a starter. She has a little jar of starter, so when she makes bread, she'll use a bit of that starter to start the fermentation process of the new loaf. And all that's to be gone, of course, during this time of year. And it says at the end of this that you shouldn't have any of the sacrifice left over until the morning. Of course, if you compare that to the Passover, when the Passover is eaten, the Israelites weren't to have any of that left over in the morning. So people jump to the conclusion, incorrectly so, that this is talking about that. And it is not. It's talking about the first day of unleavened bread, that you shall not have any of the sacrifices left over till morning, just as you did the night before on the 14th. And going on in Deuteronomy 16, you may not sacrifice the Passover within any of your gates, which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you. This is in contrast to the lamb that's sacrificed at home on the domestic home Passover. But at the place which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose to place his name in there, you shall sacrifice the Passover at even. It's the going down of the sun, specifies that's when it is, at even. So here's a definition for when evening is. It's at the going down of the sun. At the time that the sun goes over the horizon is what this is saying. At the season that you came forth out of Egypt. And you shall roast and eat it in the place which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose. And you shall turn in the morning and go into your tents. 6 days you shall eat unleavened bread. You should eat matzah. And on the 7th day shall be a solemn assembly to Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall do no work therein. So this is talking about here that we sacrifice the Passover at even, and that's at the going down of the sun. That's ba'arev there in the Hebrew. It's not bein ha'arba'im. So you've got to do a little homework to dig and see what this is about. It's also noteworthy here that in the Masoretic text and in the authorized version of the translation, not in all of the translations in English, but in many of them, you shall roast and eat it in the place which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose. Many of translations use this word roast, and it's incorrect because the Hebrew word is bishal. It means to bake. And obviously, we aren't supposed to bishal or bake the Passover sacrifice on the 14th. So here's just a little more evidence. This is talking about the peace offerings and the burnt offerings during the days of unleavened bread. And we're to eat unleavened bread for 6 days, plus 1 is what this talks about, a total of 7 days. It's noteworthy also that this is one of the places that we have a solemn assembly. The 7th day shall be a solemn assembly, an atzarah. And this word atzarah is useful to take a look at in your own study, because it comes from a root that means to hold back, refrain, or withhold yourself. I won't go into the other comparisons and its usage. There's a couple of other places it's used. But what you'll find when you examine this is that the 7th day of the day of unleavened bread is an atzarah. And you will find that the 8th day of the Feast of Tabernacles is an atzarah, or a solemn assembly. And only those two, so the tone, the demeanor, the properties of the end of the days of unleavened bread looks to me like this should be a day of restraint and withholding yourself. In other words, the tenor and the tone of the holy days change for the seventh day of the days of unleavened bread and the eighth day of the Feast of Tabernacles. And you find that in several places and verified if you happen to go look for the word solemn assembly, particularly this word atzarah in the Hebrew Strong's number 6116. So with that, we're ready to take a journey. The event of the Exodus is detailed in the book of Exodus, with additional information found in Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The saga begins, however, in the book of Genesis. An Israelite named Joseph was sold by his brothers to a group of Ishmaelite merchants for 20 pieces of silver, who in turn sold him to Potiphar, an officer of the Egyptian Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Over time, Joseph became a high official in the court of Pharaoh. During a severe famine, Joseph's 11 estranged brothers and his father Jacob came to live in Egypt in the land of Goshen. The book of Exodus begins with the death of Joseph and the ascension of a new Pharaoh who did not know Joseph. The new Pharaoh became alarmed by the number and strength of the Israelites in Egypt and enslaved them, commanding them to construct two supply chain cities named Pithon and Ramses. The new Pharaoh subsequently ordered the slaughter of all newborn Israelite children. One Israelite child, however, was rescued by being placed in a basket on the Nile. The Israelite infant was found and adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, who named him Moses. As an adult, Moses was forced to flee to Midian as a result of killing an Egyptian who was beating an Israelite slave. Moses then married a daughter of the Midianite priest Jethro. While in Midian, Moses went to Mount Horeb, where Yahuwah appeared in a burning bush and commanded him to go back to Egypt to liberate the Israelite slaves and bring them to the promised land in Canaan, thereby keeping his promise to Abraham. After returning to Egypt, Moses and Aaron approached Pharaoh and asked him to let the Israelites go into the desert to sacrifice to Yahuwah. Pharaoh refused and instead increased the brick production workload of the Israelite slaves. Even after multiple supernatural plagues that caused long-term economic devastation to the Egyptian economy, Pharaoh remained obstinate and unwilling to release the Israelite slaves. One final plague from Yahuwah destroyed the entire firstborn population in the land of Egypt, including man and beast. Yahuwah kept his word and sent the death angel against the Egyptians, but redeemed the firstborn of the Israelites with the blood from a sacrifice of a perfect lamb that was painted on their doorpost. This is the story of that event. So to start this, let's start in Exodus chapter 12. We'll be looking through Exodus 11 and 12 in some amount of detail for the remainder of the presentation. Now, the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day it came to pass, that all the host of Yahuwah went out from the land of Egypt. It is a night to be much observed unto Yahuwah for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. That is that night of Yahuwah to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations. And I want to mention this word self-same day. I've mentioned it recently, and I want to mention it again when I see it, because it's showing us, when we see it in the context with the underlying Hebrew, including this word etzem or bone, when we see it in that context with the Hebrew etzem word, it's drawing our attention to a significant date. And if you go research this out, I think you'll find that most of the time when you see self-same, and it's constructed of Zeh and Etzem, it will be a significant date that's being brought to our attention. And this is no different here. This is a significant date. It's the end of a 430-year period, a terminus aquem, if you will. And the word bone is interesting because the word bone is in fact the word that we use for, like the bones of men or the bones of animals. So it's a real interesting idiom that it's used that way. And the word etzem or bone itself, if you bury an animal or a skeleton, the bone is what you dig up years and years later. The bone is all that there's left. So bone has a lasting quality about it when it's buried. I suspect that's the reason and the foundation of this word etzem and ze-etzem, when you see it, that the self-same day has a lasting eternal quality about it that's noteworthy. When you compare this same verse in the Septuagint, you get one other piece of information that's really useful in the study of the 430 years, which we did last week. But in the Septuagint, it says the sojourning of the children of Israel while they sojourn in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan was 430 years. And it came to pass after the 430 years, all the forces of Yahuwah came forth out of the land of Egypt by night. So we're going to start with this. They came out by night. And let's take a look at some preliminary events, starting in Exodus chapter 10. And Yahuwah said to Moses, stretch out your hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness in the land of Egypt. Can you imagine Moses stretching out his hand to heaven, that there may be darkness in the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. I don't know if you've ever been in a place that dark, but like a cave or something like that, and you had no light, and you can't see the hand in front of your face. And Moses stretched forth his hand toward heaven, and there was thick darkness in all the land 3 days. Thick darkness. And it's useful to take a look at what the Hebrew is trying to get across to us. The word thick means duskiness. So yes, it's darkness, but it also means misfortune, concealment, and gloominess. So this has a pejorative connotation, and the word darkness is the same way, another pejorative connotation. Yes, it means dark, but it also means misery, destruction, death, ignorance, sorrow, and wickedness. All of that darkness is going to be in the land of Egypt 3 days. They saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days. They couldn't see one another. In the Septuagint, it's interesting that they didn't rise from bed for 3 days. That may be what happened. What are you going to do if you can't see the hand in front of your face? Just go to bed. I guess maybe that's what they did. But all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. And Pharaoh called to Moses and said, go you serve Yahuwah. Only let your flocks and herds be stayed. You leave those behind. Let your little ones go also. And Moses said, you must give us also sacrifices of burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice to Yahuwah our Elohim. Our cattle also shall go with us. There shall not a hoof be left behind, for thereof must we take to serve Yahuwah our Elohim. And we know not with what we must serve until we get there. That's pretty amazing. Yahuwah's going to show us when we get there, not yet though. And notice that they're going to offer sacrifices and burnt offerings. There's not an indication that they're going to have a Passover day. That explanation and revelation is yet to come. But Yahuwah hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let them go. And Pharaoh said unto him, get you from me, take heed to yourself, see my face no more, for in that day you see my face, you shall die. And Moses said, you have spoken well. I will see your face again no more. So a couple of the points about this section of the preliminary events. We've jumped into the ninth plague is what this is. There were 8 plagues before this. They seemed to incrementally get worse and harder. And of course, the 10th plague itself was the death of the firstborn. But we're at the 9th one with this darkness. And that they were going to offer burnt offerings in their honor to Yahuwah when they requested to leave. Probably the significant part I want you to remember from this page, though, is that Moses will not see Pharaoh again. This is all before the Passover events started to take place on the 14th. Moses said, "You spoke well, I will see your face again no more." Here's another one-liner. I believe this one-liner means what it says. We will come back to it. So put it up your sleeve for right now and remember that Moses said that he's not going to see Pharaoh's face again anymore. And in Exodus chapter 11, a little bit more background in some of the preliminary events. And Yahuwah said to Moses, "Yet will I bring one more plague upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt, and afterward he will let you go hence. When he shall let you go, he shall surely thrust you out hence altogether. Speak now in the ears of the people, and let every man borrow." Yahuwah is giving instruction to Moses here to speak to the people and let every man borrow, which means inquire, request, demand. I think they're getting their paycheck for wages withheld. "Let every man borrow of his neighbor and every woman of her neighbor jewels of silver and jewels of gold." And Yahuwah gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people. And Moses said, "Thus says Yahuwah, about midnight will I go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sits upon his throne, even the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of the beast." So several points about this, that Moses is telling the Israelites that they're going to solicit wealth from the Egyptians. Keep in mind, when Moses writes, he writes forward, looking forward, and then he might interject something that's looking backward. So you can't just take all of Moses' writing in an exact chronological order. So Moses is speaking here to the ears of the people, "Let every man borrow." He's talking about that which is yet to come. You're going to go borrow of your neighbors. I don't believe it's happening quite at this point in time. He's talking about this is what's going to happen. And Yahuwah gave the people, will give the people, when the event happens, favor in the sight of the Egyptians. So just note that that's probably not an exact chronological order as we're talking here. And also that the instruction that Moses said is going to be about midnight. That means the middle of the night, the middle part of the night. This is not a precise exactly at midnight. I hear some commentary and some people say, well, exactly at midnight, the death angel come, at 12:01 they left. Well, no, they didn't. There's other scriptures that show they didn't leave that night. And so the death angel came about midnight, and the firstborn of all the land are going to be threatened. The only thing that saves the Israelite firstborn is the blood that's about to be put on their doorpost. And this picture here kind of gives an idea of the aftermath of what this might have looked like, with death and destruction all through the land of Egypt. This was a grand land, by the way. I'll show you a reconnaissance photo of what Ramses looked like in these days shortly. And going on into Exodus chapter 11, there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there was none like it, nor shall be like it anymore. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man or beast, that you may know that Yahuwah does put a difference between the Israelites and the Egyptians. And all these your servants shall come down unto me and bow down themselves unto me, saying, Get you out, and all the people that follow you. This is Moses now saying this of what will happen. He's saying, in all of these servants, he's in Pharaoh's court here when he talks about this. All of these servants shall come down to me, bow down yourself unto me, and they're going to tell me to get out. And all the people that follow you, and after that I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in great anger. And Yahuwah said to Moses, Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt. And Moses and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh and his servants, by the way, that were there. And Yahuwah hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he would not let the children of Israel go out of his land. First highlight I want to mention is the great cry throughout all Egypt. You need to really think about this one. Wherever you live, in the city or the community you live, even in the remote location where we live, if there was the death of the firstborn of animals and people, even with the sparsity of population, we would know about it when it started to happen. There would be crying in these mountains, there would be yelling, there would be screaming, let alone when you're living in a city of several million people. Think about your own location. If your neighbors experience the death of their firstborn, all around you, you will know that this is happening. A great cry. Notice that it's throughout all the land of Egypt. So that doesn't say in Ramses or the city, the state of Goshen, all the land of Egypt, there's going to be a great cry. And when this is happening, there's going to be no barking dogs. That's another one we can relate to, is we like it when there's no barking dogs, but barking dogs aren't very controllable. So what a miraculous event this all by itself would be, with the commotion and the cry throughout all the land, and there'll be no barking dogs. We take the no barking dogs probably through the time that they were leaving also. That's conjecture, but the no barking dogs comment that's made here is in itself quite a miracle. And when Moses was talking to Pharaoh about getting out, we're going to see when we get to Exodus chapter 12, verse 31, that exactly that's what is fulfilled, that the Pharaoh's servants are going to come to Moses' location. They're going to bow down to him and they're going to say, get out. And upon these comments, Moses left Pharaoh's presence. It's the conclusion of the final meeting with Pharaoh. And remember what I just told you on the previous page in Exodus 10. And Moses said, you have spoken well. I will see your face again no more. Make sure you remember the order of these things and don't put your own order to them. Moses wasn't going to see Pharaoh anymore, and the servants were going to come and bow down to him and say, get out. So with those preliminary events, let's look at somewhat of a detailed timeline of what is transpiring here. And we'll be using this timeline with the scriptures underneath it. And the first place I want to start is here on Abib 14th. As we go into Abib 14th, the little red identifier here is Bein ha-arba'im. This would be the time when the Passover actually starts, and they were roasting the lamb according to the instructions that we've previously written. So our presentation today is going to be focusing on these 2 days, Abib 14th, Passover day, and Abib 15th, the first day of unleavened bread. So the lamb is going to be killed at sundown. And Yahuwah spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak you unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the house be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats, not from the cows or the bovine or the oxen, from the sheep or the goats. You shall keep it until, here's that Hebrew word again, ad, keep it until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation shall kill it. Bein ha-arba'im. So keep it until, as far as, up till the border of the 14th day of the month. It means the beginning of the 14th day. I've also, in the previous presentation, mentioned some comparisons in Genesis about the Noah's Ark, the flood, and Noah, and the break of the day in Genesis 32, and the 32nd year of Artaxerxes in Nehemiah chapter 5. But I'm not going to go into those comparisons. Just know that they're there. You'll see the same word until, and gives you the understanding when you look at these comparisons. Until means to the beginning part of something, not to the end part of something. And going on in Exodus 12, verse 18, in the first month on the 14th day of the month at even, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at even. It's the contrast of no bein ha-arba'im, and the contrast of when the Passover starts at bein ha-arba'im on the 14th versus the first day of unleavened bread at the conclusion of the 14th day at even through the 21st day at even. And then going on here with this timeline account, the lamb is roasted and eaten, and they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper doorpost of the houses wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in that night. They roast it with fire. They sale it. They don't bashal it. And they roast it with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden. That means bashal or boiled. Don't eat it that way at all with water, but roast it with fire, his head with his legs, and with the pertinence. In other words, you don't clean the animal out. You don't dress it out. You roast it whole. And you shall let nothing of it remain until the morning. Another key distinction here. And that which remains until the morning, up against the morning, here's that same word again, ad, Hebrew word ad. That which remains until the morning you shall burn with fire. And thus shall you eat it with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It's Yahuwah's Passover. Now, some like to use this last sentence here, that you shall eat it and with your shoes on and your staff in your hand, and you're ready to go and you're going to leave that night. It doesn't say that. It says be ready. It's also a big clue here when you read this in context, that you shall let none of it remain until the morning. Moses is giving the instructions for this first Passover. They aren't going to leave until the morning. Here is what this is telling us. Don't let it remain until the morning. And that which does, if there is any in the morning, you burn it with fire. Obviously, if they were going to leave that night or did leave that night, they wouldn't be able to fulfill this. So you got to read the whole thing in context and not just some little piece of it. So yes, they were ready. They were on the alert. Imagine what's going on here, though. Imagine yourself with the blood painted around your doorpost. That's the cry in the land that's going on all around you. Moses told them to stay in all night, and they did stay in all night. And a couple of comparisons here. This is Moses commanding them, take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that's in your basin and strike at the lintel and the two side posts with the blood that's in the basin. What's he say? None of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. Does that include everybody? I think it includes everybody. Complete Jewish Bible compares to this: take a bunch of hyssop leaves and dip it in the blood which is in the basin and smear it on the two sides and the top of your door frame. Then none of you is to go out the door of his house until the morning. And the Septuagint comparison, you should take a bunch of hyssop, having dipped it in some of the blood that's by the door, you shall touch the lintel and shall put it upon the doorpost, even the blood which is by the door, but you shall not go out every one from the door of his house till the morning. I don't see any variation or deviation from the context of this in any of these translations that would suggest that they don't have to stay in all night. Don't go out until the morning. I think and if you were living there and going through this, would you want to go out knowing that the death angel is out and about this night? I think the answer is not. The bullets are flying outside. So if it's a firefight outside, are you going to say, well, I guess I'll go outside and see what's going on? I don't think so. So the death of the firstborn occurs now. For I will pass through or cross over the land of Egypt this night. It's noteworthy that the death angel is crossing over. It's not an instant at a time. The death angel is crossing over the land, and I will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. In the land of Egypt, not just at Ramses, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt, I will execute judgment. I am Yahuwah. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. And the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and you shall keep it a feast to Yahuwah throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. So this account here is real rich in what's going on here. It's the whole land. It's man and beast. There's a lot of death and destruction going on. That's why it's not just a little cry. It's a loud cry from all the people that are experiencing this death and destruction. And the blood that you've posted around your door frames is your protection. And they would know that. They were told that. The death angel is going to pass over you, and the plague will not be upon you. There's nobody that's going to risk going outside. If you were living through this, would you risk going outside when the bullets are flying? From an allegorical standpoint, yes, the death angel is passing over and passing by, and you're not going to take any chance to go outside. There's no instruction here that says anything like that. This has to be happening this particular night on the 14th, and they stayed in all night. Now, our aerial view is courtesy Moses' Facebook page. Turns out he has a security drone. You can see the footage of what this location looks like of Ramses, and it's quite a remarkable high definition view that Moses was able to capture. Now, the city of Ramses existed and was built on the northeast delta region in Egypt. So if you find yourself a map, you'll find it's up near, really pretty close to the Mediterranean where this city occurs. This is near where one of these large tributaries of the Nile that existed up in these days entered and exited and dumped into the Mediterranean. This is rival of the great city of Thebes, according to the historical record. There are potentially 3 pharaohs that could have been in power during the Exodus. There aren't any Egyptian records that have been found, at least that I know of, that identify this historical event. So most people that study it from a historical standpoint put this whole account as legend and tradition, and that it didn't really occur. We don't believe so. We believe that this is a real event. We see the details of it, and it's one of the foundational items, particularly for the spring holy days, and ultimately for the return of Yeshua, and the coming of Yeshua and the return of Yeshua. Amenhotep II is one of the candidates for being the Pharaoh. His father was Thutmose III, and it's probable that one of these two was the actual Pharaoh. The one that matches up best to when it looks like this event occurred, which was around 1450 BCE. The one that matches up best to it is Thutmose III. These are all 18th dynasty pharaohs in Egyptology. Many people, though, lean that this is the Pharaoh Ramses II, because he was the one that apparently built the city of Ramses, or built it up. And that doesn't occur, though, until the 13th century. And when you try to put the chronology of when the Israelites left Egypt with when they came into the promised land, and when the judges existed, and then when Samuel, Saul, David, Solomon reigned. When you try to put all that together, it seems to suggest more like a 1450 BCE Exodus, but all of this is conjecture. There are certainly pluses and minuses in all of the alternatives if you go look at it, and it's an interesting study by itself. The one thing that we know from the scriptures is this would not have been any small place. Just a couple of items to get your mind's eye view thinking what this was really like. In Exodus 12, it says the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses and Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men besides children. I mean, that's easy to see. If it was 600,000 men, this is going to be a couple of million people that have been assembled here. A couple of million people is a large city of humanity, let alone all of the Egyptians that would have been there to guard them and to keep them working as the slaves. I would suggest there was at least another 500,000, if not 1 million Egyptians that would have had to been in the area to keep the servitude going. So you look across the landscape here, this picture probably doesn't even do justice for what it looked like with all of the Israelites that were now camped around here. They were staying in whatever shelters they could have. Maybe some of them were in tents, I don't know, and some of them were in buildings. Another part of this, though, is that Pharaoh had a huge military machine, and he took 600 chosen chariots and all the chariots of Egypt, I think that means in addition to, and captains over every one of them. And the account that you can compare in Josephus, if my memory is right, Josephus said he had 1,000 chariots. So in any case, the scripture shows that 600 chariots, horses, and the associated infrastructure to support that would have to be kept someplace. And this obviously, in this drone view from Moses' Facebook page, is the palace complex, Pharaoh's palace complex. You know, you got a big open courtyard here. You couldn't put 600 chariots in this courtyard here. So they had to come from someplace. They had to be stored in buildings someplace. And all of the captains of the chariots had to be living someplace, let alone all of the other military that he would have had to have there, and the people to oversee the oppression of the Israelites. So this location is no small location. And the reason I'm going through this is, how long would it take to get notification from one place or another? Keep in mind this event was happening all over Egypt, but even so, people that were losing their firstborn and their cattle on the other side of the river they would have sent people into Pharaoh's compound. Pharaoh would have been receiving people all night long coming into him. It wouldn't have been a 5-minute event. You have to think about this on how it would have unfolded. This would have taken, it's almost hard to imagine it would have taken less than a few hours to unfold before Pharaoh sent his envoy to Moses to say, get out. It didn't happen sharp at midnight, as some people have thought. But think about this from the standpoint of how many people were there and the infrastructure that would have been involved. The Israelites would have been mixed in with the Egyptians. Certainly, the Egyptians aren't going to let them be by themselves. There's going to be Egyptians intermixed with all these couple of million Israelites. And it's like something goes on at your neighbor's house next door, you're going to know about it if it's an event this significant. So this was no small location, no small operation, and Pharaoh's palace and capital himself would have had lots of traffic coming in and out before he made the decision to send his envoy to Moses. So going on here, the death of the firstborn unfolds now, and it came to pass at midnight. Yes, it says at midnight, but take this in the context of it all. It came to pass at midnight, Yahuwah smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne until the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night and said, rise up and get you forth from among my people, both you and the children of Israel, and go serve Yahuwah as you have said. So he's finally caving in here. He's going to, the death of his firstborn, which he would have witnessed, now is all a part of this. And notice how he says this, or how it's recorded here. There was not a house where there was not one dead. And he called for Moses. This word called means an encounter. It doesn't mean that he called Moses to come to him. What did Moses tell us? And I'll read it here in Exodus chapter 11, that Moses told us previously they were going to come to him. So this was an encounter for Moses and Aaron by night. In other words, Pharaoh summoned Moses through an envoy. This wasn't a face-to-face meeting. Take your flocks and your herds as you have said, and be gone. By the way, bless me too, was the message. Pretty amazing. Repeating what I said, remember a few slides back from Exodus 11, what did Moses say when he was with Pharaoh? On the last time he was with Pharaoh, and all these your servants shall come down unto me. They shall come down unto me and bow down yourselves unto me, saying, get you out and all the people that follow you. And after that, I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in great anger. So this was obviously before any of these events were starting to unfold. So I hope you see the context of this and put the parts and pieces together. So the Israelites leave their homes in the daylight period of the 14th. You shall take a bunch of hyssop, dip it in the blood that's in the basin, strike it on the lintel of the two side posts with the blood. None of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. For Yahuwah will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he sees the blood on your lintel and on the two side posts, Yahuwah will pass over the door. He will not permit the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. You're not going to chance that, are you? You're not going to open the door and chance that. And you shall observe this thing for an ordinance to you and to your sons forever. And it shall come to pass when you become to the land which Yahuwah will give you, according as he has promised, that you shall keep this service. So the Israelites spoiled the Egyptians during the daylight period, and it would have had to have been during the daylight period, just to be pretty much going to house anyway. They didn't have street lights like we kind of model our society today of what it would have been like 3,500 years ago, and it was obviously nothing like what we live today. The Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste. Everybody's lost somebody in their family. The firstborn of their sons or daughters are dead, and the firstborn of anybody that had any herd is dead. For they say, we be all dead man. This would take a bit of time to sink in that all this is happening. It would, been over a several hour period over the evening, and the sunlight comes and you realize the death and destruction, because now you can see it all over. And the people, meaning the Israelites, took their dough before it was leavened. This is the kamatz stage, the fermented, before it was fermented. And their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes, and they took it upon their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed. They inquired, they requested, and demanded of the Egyptians jewels of silver, jewels of gold, and raiment. And Yahuwah gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. So I'm thinking how that would happen, and all the death and destruction. That the Israelites, if you were an Egyptian, the Israelites would have been protected through all this, and all you want them to do is leave. So you're going to, whatever you want, you just take it. Just get out of here before we all die. So the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. It says in Exodus 12, verse 40. And we've studied the 430 years going backwards last week. And so this is the end of the 430 years, the terminus aquem, if you will. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the self-same day, here's that za etzem again, that self-same day it came to pass that all the host of Yahuwah went out from the land of Egypt. It is a night to be much observed unto Yahuwah for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. This is that night to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations. And I'm going to parse out just a little bit here, this night to be much observed. It's a night to be guarded, protected, or become circumspect. And it's only in two places, only in this verse here that you see to be observed is this Hebrew word that means to be guard, protect, or circumspect. It says to Yahuwah and bringing them out of the land. So we're to be circumspect this 15th evening, the evening that we call the night to be much remembered. I would suggest that this is a night, yes, it's a night of joy that they were able to leave and that we have been able to leave and be called out of this Babylonian world that we live in. But its main focus for the night to be observed is to be circumspect, to guard and protect it. The word self-same, by the way, has a couple of comparisons here that I wanted to bring up. You see it three places in this chapter 12. And the other two places that you see it are, you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in this self-same day I have brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore you shall observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. And the other place in chapter 12 that you see it is, it came to pass the self-same day, za etzem, that Yahuwah did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. It's noteworthy that you'll find a total of 18 occurrences of this. If you go look, I didn't want to catalog them all, but you can easily just take the two Hebrew words, H2088 and H6106, if you're using an electronic concordance of any kind, and you'll find where all these 18 occurrences are. Now, a couple of comparisons of the term night to be observed, so we maybe get a little different flavor for it than what perhaps some have had in the past. It is a watch kept to Yahuwah, a watch kept. One of the thoughts that we have had here is that the 14th is a watch for the Israelites. The Israelites were to be watching on the 14th. They were to be vigilant. They were to be aware, ready to go when Yahuwah gave them the word, not to be sleeping that night, but to be ready to go. But this 15th is a watch to be kept so that he should bring them out of the land of Egypt. That very night is a watch kept to Yahuwah, so that it should be to all the children of Israel to their generations. That's what the Septuagint says. I think that the complete Jewish Bible might even have the best rendering of this, at least is the ones that I compared. You can look at the comparisons on your own. The complete Jewish Bible says this was a night when Adonai kept vigil to bring them out of the land of Egypt. And this same night continues to be a night when Adonai keeps vigil for all the people of Israel throughout all their generations. So we've started to take the approach that this night is Yahuwah's night of watching, not our night of watching. Our night of watching was the 14th. Yahuwah's night of watching is the 15th. And why is he watching? He's watching and guarding to make sure that they're able to go and making sure that all the details are being taken care of. And the Israelites leave by night. And it came to pass after 430 years, all the forces of Yahuwah came forth out of the land of Egypt by night, says in the Septuagint. And we see another example of the timing of this at this point. And they departed from Ramses in the first month on the 15th day of the first month. On the morrow after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians. So when you read this, they went out on the 15th day, and it's the morrow after the Passover that they went. It's hard for me to understand how that's not easy to understand. The day after the Passover is the 15th day. The Passover is the 14th day. And but somehow that gets mixed up, but that's just what it says here. And again, in Deuteronomy 16, another reference to this period and this date. Observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover unto Yahuwah your Elohim, for in the month of Abib, Yahuwah your Elohim brought you forth out of Egypt by night. Had to be on this night of the 15th. There's no other way you could parse this out. And remember what Moses had previously said, but against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man or beast, that you may know how that Yahuwah does put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. And all these your servants shall come down to me and bow yourselves down unto me, saying, get you out, and all the people that follow you, and after that I will go. So it would seem to me in the context that the dogs are talking about when they left, and what a spectacle that would be, a couple million people leaving this area of Ramses, going out in an orderly fashion under the command of Moses with, the pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day to lead them, going out and no dogs are barking. That would be quite a thing just all by itself. And then what happened when they left? The children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men besides children. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. They baked unleavened cakes of the dough, which they brought forth out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not tarry, neither had they prepared for themselves any victual. And then going on in Numbers, chapter 33, the Egyptians buried all their firstborn, which Yahuwah had smitten among them. Upon their Elohim also Yahuwah executed judgment. So obviously they had, false deities there, and they had idols, and Yahuwah has taken care of all of that, killed their firstborn, and took down all of their idols. And the children of Israel removed from Ramses, and they pitched in Succoth. And if you do the research on this, this would appear to be something like about their first move was something like about 20 miles. And so they didn't go a significant long way, but 20 miles with all their herds would have been an amazing accomplishment. All their herds and all their little ones, the wives, the men, and the belongings that they were carrying out, going some 20 miles on this first part of the journey. So the end of all this is that the Passover is established. So the end of the account in Exodus ends with this domestic household Passover legislation. Yahuwah said to Moses and Aaron, this is an ordinance of the Passover. There shall no stranger eat thereof, but every man's servant that is bought for money, when you have circumcised him, then shall he eat thereof. A foreigner and a hired servant shall not eat thereof. In one house shall it be eaten. You shall not carry forth aught of the flesh abroad out of the house, neither shall you break a bone thereof. All the congregation of Israel shall keep it. And when a stranger shall sojourn with you and will keep the Passover to Yahuwah, let all his males be circumcised, and let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as one that is born in the land, for no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. One law shall be to him that is homeborn, and another the stranger that sojourns among you. Thus did all the children of Israel as Yahuwah commanded. Moses and Aaron, so did they. And it came to pass the self same day that Yahuwah did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. So it's noteworthy here that the connection to taking the Passover in the old covenant was being circumcised in the flesh. We believe what the new covenant says, that the circumcision would be of the heart for taking part of the Passover. So circumcision of the heart becomes the new standard and the new benchmark for believers in Yeshua. And this was about the Passover sacrifice for the home, and the emblem obviously is circumcision. The new covenant emblem certainly is circumcision of the heart, but of the bread and the wine that Yeshua established in 30 CE during his final Passover dinner before his crucifixion. So if we summarize the events that happened that we've been rehearsing here, we see that Moses will not see Pharaoh again. Before this Passover event starts on the 14th, Moses says he will not see Pharaoh again, and he didn't. And the instructions say to keep the lamb up until the 14th, the beginning of the 14th, and then it's Yahuwah's Passover. And the instructions, it told us not to go out until the morning, and that it's an ordinance forever. And that Pharaoh summoned Moses through an envoy, and that the 15th night is a night to be remembered, for what Yahuwah has guarded and protected us from, and that they left on the 15th, and that they left by night. And I've highlighted in gold the three anchors that show us exactly when all this occurred. And actually only one of the anchors is necessary if you understand and believe Exodus 12:22, do not go out until the morning. If you believe that's indeed what they did, you have no alternative but to put the rest of this together in the order of the 14th. In the evening going into the 14th is the Passover of the Lamb, and the evening starting the 15th is when they left Egypt by night. There's no other way you can put it together, but it's key and essential that you understand that they did not go out until the morning in this account. So the three items don't go out to the morning. They left on the 15th, they left by night. That's pretty much all you really need to know, and you can determine exactly the chronology of all of this. So that gets us to my mantra. Be sure to do your own homework. Go take a look at these scriptures on your own. Don't believe what I say, believe what the scriptures say. Psalm 25 says, show me your ways, Yahuwah, and teach me your paths. Yes, our Father, teach us the truth. Teach us through spirit and truth. Lead me in your truth, your certainty, your stability, and teach me, for you are the Elohim of my salvation. On you do I wait all the day. You are the Elohim of my salvation. The word salvation is translated in most places in the Tanakh from the Hebrew word Yesha. It's as a reminder of who's the author of our salvation, Yeshua. Salvation is the word Yesha, and it's a reminder of our liberty, deliverance, and salvation through Yeshua Messiah. Seek first the kingdom of Yahuwah. That's what we want to do. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added. You know what else gets added when you seek first his kingdom and his righteousness? Peace. Peace of mind. With Yahuwah's kingdom and his righteousness comes peace and peace of mind. So do your own homework. So coming up in this series, in the next part of the series, we're going to take a look at the historical Passovers. The historical Passovers start with the second year of this Exodus account, because the second year just before they left Mount Sinai, some 11 months after they arrived, there's a second Passover, or a Passover mentioned, and also the instructions for a second Passover during that year. We also will see that Joshua had a Passover when he went in, just before he went into the promised land. Hezekiah, Josiah, and Ezekiel and Zerubbabel also give us historical writing of Passovers that occurred in their times. We'll take a look at all these next time when we get together for the historical Passover. So until then, may Yeshua bless you. May he keep you. May he watch over us. May he guard us. We thank you for these holy days. We're grateful to be here, grateful to serve and honor you, our Heavenly Father. So we seek your truth, your way, and may your kingdom come in Yeshua's name. Hallelujah.
Our most great and majestic, magnificent and wonderful Father in heaven. Father, we come before you on this day with great thanksgiving in our hearts and with great praise and honor to you. Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to gather here and to receive this inspired message into our hearts and our minds, that it may be taken deeply into us, that we may walk more closely this life in the way that our Messiah walked in his. Yahuwah, we come before you with great humility and with great humbleness, and thank you just from our deepest parts. Father, we appreciate so much the significance of these days that we hold in memorial to you. And we look forward each day for more and more from you and learning your ways. We do thank you now and ask these things in the name and by the authority given to us by your Son, our Messiah, Yahushua, our Messiah. Amen and amen.
Amen.
He was a worn and weary pilgrim, traveling down life's road in search of his promised land. The way was rough and rocky, Keep on walking. Don't turn back. You're on the right track. Just keep on walking. Keep on walking. Keep on walking. You're not alone. You're almost home. Just keep on walking. Keep on walking. You're not alone. Keep on walking. You're almost home. Keep on walking. Just keep on walking.
I'm waiting for my Redeemer. I'm watching for His return. I keep waiting, I keep watching, I keep looking for signs that He gave, and I'm trusting my soul He will save. I'm believing in all He has promised. I'm receiving blessings each day. I'm believing, I'm receiving. In the end, all His words will come true, and I'm hoping His words find you. So come, Messiah, come, 'cause this old world is getting me down. I feel like a stranger and a wanderer, like an alien homeward bound. I'm just waiting for that trumpet sound. this old world is getting me down. I feel like a stranger and a wanderer, like an alien homeward bound. I'm just waiting for that trumpet sound. I feel like a stranger and a wanderer, like an alien homeward bound. I'm just waiting for that